Most lost intermediate guitar players believe that progress requires lengthy practice sessions, an hour a day, 2 hours a day. If I don't have that kind of time, what's the point? But here's the truth. The students I've worked with who have had the most success are the ones who know how to make the most out of the time that they do have. If you've got 30 minutes a day and you think that that's a limitation, it's actually an advantage, because once you know how to apply the 80-20 rule, the idea that 80% of your results come from just 20% of your efforts, you'll realize that 30 minutes a day is plenty, so long as you spend those 30 minutes on the 20% of lead guitar concepts that will actually move the needle. That's what this video is about, showing you that having a small amount of time to practice each day isn't the problem. It's your own limiting beliefs about that time that are the problem. And so we need to discard them from your mind completely to get you on the path of progress. So today I'm going to show you how I would apply the 80-20 rule to a 30-minute lead guitar practice session for intermediates so that you can understand how to squeeze as much progress as possible out of those 30 minutes. I'm going to call this the 30-minute 80-20 practice stack. There are 3 main aspects of lead guitar progress we'll cover in this session, and to make them stick, I want to use the analogy of martial arts training. Think of it like this. We've got warm-ups, which equal fretboard visualization, pad work, which equals vocabulary study, and sparring, which equals improvisation. If you've ever been in a martial arts class, you'll know that the warm-up isn't about showing off your best moves. It's about priming your body, jump rope, stretching, shadow boxing. So when the real training starts, you're sharp, loose, and ready. On guitar, the same principle applies. Our warm-up is fretboard visualization. 5 minutes a day, where you're not worried about speed or flashy licks. You're simply mapping out where the notes, scales, triads, and arpeggios live across the fretboard. When I was stuck as a lost intermediate, this was the missing piece. It wasn't that I lacked technique or hadn't learned enough scales. It was that I could only see those scales in isolated little pockets on the fretboard. The second I moved out of box 1 of the minor pentatonic, it was like I was blind. Take Mixolydian, for example, one of the 4 high leverage scales I talked about in yesterday's video, and a core part of the 80-20 lead guitar mastery curriculum. Most players approach Mixolydian by grinding huge 3-note per string patterns. That's like trying to warm up by burning yourself out with burpees and box jumps until your legs turn to jelly. My approach is to use the minor pentatonic as your base and then add the Mixolydian color tones to the shapes you already know. That way you're not throwing out your foundation, you're expanding it, you're building on it. Since Mixolydian meshes well with the minor pentatonic, I treat the 5 pentatonic boxes as the framework. Then I train myself to see exactly where those Mixolydian notes fall inside each box. In 80-20 lead guitar mastery, I give you fretboard visualization drills designed to build that skill. And just like shadow boxing makes you sharper in pad work and sparring, these short exercises make you sharper when it's time to actually solo. Do them for 5 minutes a day, and within weeks, you'll find yourself seeing the fretboard very differently, suddenly able to connect licks that you've learned from your heroes and understand what they are playing. Here's an example. Let's take box 3 of the A minor pentatonic, and I'll show you how to quickly locate the extra Mixolydian notes inside that shape. Okay, so here's position 3 of the A minor pentatonic. In this exercise, I've added 4 notes to this position. 3 are from A Mixolydian and 1 is just the flat 5 from the blues scale, which if you're a pentatonic player, you'll likely already be used to using in your pentatonic licks. The notes from Mixolydian that I've added are its natural 2nd, major 3rd, and natural 6th. If you don't know what that means, it's okay, just keep watching because later in this video series, I'll break down note choices for each mode in much more detail. Let's start with the natural 2nd. In this exercise, I add that note in between the 2 notes in this 3rd pentatonic box at fret 12 on the B string. Next is the major 3rd from Mixolydian, which I have added in between the 2 notes on the D string. And last is the natural sixth, which I've added in two places. One is on the A string, and another is an octave higher on the G string. As for the flat 5 from the blues scale, in this exercise I play it on the high E string. Now I'm going to play through that exercise again, and this time I'm going to add in fretboard diagrams to show you where those additional notes from Mixolydian lie in relation to that third position of the A minor pentatonic. So now that you've warmed up with fretboard visualization, it's time for some pad work. In martial arts, pad work is where you take the raw movements you've practiced in your warm-up and you start shaping them into combinations on the pads or a heavy bag. On guitar, pad work is about doing the exact same thing with your note choices, turning raw fretboard knowledge into musical vocabulary that you would actually want to use in a solo. And that's what vocabulary really means. Short, powerful examples of phrasing pulled from real solos and licks. If you asked me what is the single fastest way to improve your lead playing, I'd say this: study the vocabulary of your heroes. Not to copy them, but to absorb their ideas and make them part of your own sound. That's why in the course you'll not only get full solo studies for each mode that we cover, but also access to the vocabulary vaults, a huge collection of lick lessons that show you exactly how to use the scales in a musical way. But I don't just throw tab at you and say, good luck learning these. I break down every lick note by note, showing you why each one works, which notes are pentatonic, which ones are Mixolydian color tones, and how they tie directly back to the fretboard visualization that you just did. So let me show you an example. Here's a Jeff Beck inspired Mixolydian lick played out of the exact same A minor pentatonic box 3 area that we used in the warm-up. Now, slowed down and with fretboard diagrams on screen, pay attention to where those Mixolydian notes that I showed you earlier, the natural second, the major third, and the natural sixth, fall in relation to the pentatonic framework. I've also slipped in the flat 5 from the blues scale to give it that gritty edge. And this is why the pad work comes after the warm-up. The warm-up gives you the visual map and gets your fingers warm. Now, with the vocabulary study, you're learning how to put all of that into practice. You're not just memorizing shapes, you're connecting the dots between fretboard visualization, theory, and music. So for this part of your 30-minute routine, you want to set aside 10 minutes to get one lick, one piece of vocabulary under your fingers. Pay attention to the phrasing, to the timing, and analyze the note choices so that you don't just learn it technically, you actually understand why it sounds good. Do this consistently, and you'll find yourself playing lines that sound much more like music and less like scale pattern exercises. Now it's time for the final 10 minutes of your lead guitar routine, sparring. In martial arts, once you've warmed up and drilled combinations on the pads, you don't just pack up and go home. You finish with sparring, a live controlled test where you get to throw those same combinations at a partner and see how they hold up under pressure, and you get to find out the same for yourself, right? On guitar, sparring is like improvisation. This is where you take the fretboard visualization from the warm-up, the vocabulary from the pad work, and you put it to work over a backing track. But here's the key detail. Sparring isn't like a free-for-all. You don't jump in and throw every wild move you can think of. You impose a constraint, a rule that forces you to apply what you've just practiced. So instead of running all over the fretboard after your warm-up and vocabulary study, keep yourself rooted in the same area of the fretboard that you just worked in. Build phrases there, explore bends, slides, and rhythms, but stay inside that zone. For example, here's me improvising in that 5 fret radius of the fretboard, or box 3 of the minor pentatonic, and all those additional mixolydian notes exist. Now, some other useful constraints you could try in your practice might be to only allow yourself to end phrases on certain chord tones, avoid using any expressive techniques like bends or slides, or avoid starting your phrases on beat 1 of the bar every time. Why do this? Because constraints create focus. They stop you from aimlessly noodling and force you to make more intentional musical decisions in the moment. Do this for 10 minutes and you'll notice something. Improvisation suddenly feels less overwhelming and way more musical because you're not trying to use the entire universe of options all at once. You're training for depth, not just range. We've got 5 minutes left for your routine, and this is where you turn practice into progress. Hit record. Not for Instagram, not for YouTube, just for you. Make a quick one-take recording of what you worked on in your session. Save it in a practice folder on your phone or your computer and watch it back. Here's the point of doing this. You can't fix what you don't notice. When you review yourself on video, you spot habits in your phrasing, timing, or note choices that you might not have noticed in the moment. Now, to make this stick, I recommend a super simple journaling routine in addition to recording yourself. So after you watch the clip, answer these 3 questions. What was today's focus? An example answer could be building fretboard visualization and phrasing in box 3 by adding mixolydian notes. What did I learn? Well, I learned how to find the natural second, the major third, and the natural sixth in relation to box 3. What's the focus for tomorrow? Well, I'll probably want to stay in box 3 for a few more days until it feels very comfortable, and then I plan on moving to box 4 and repeating the same process. That's it. 1 recording, 3 notes, 5 minutes. The result of this is that you will create a positive feedback loop. Every session connects to the next practice session, and that momentum is what keeps your motivation high, because the more clearly you see your progress, the more excited you'll be to sit down and practice again tomorrow. And that's how I would structure a 30-minute intermediate lead guitar practice routine using the 80-20 rule. 5 minutes of warm-up, 10 minutes of pad work, 10 minutes of sparring, 5 minutes of recording and journaling. This structure forces you to be intentional with the time you have. I hope that by now you've begun to notice a mental shift from I only have 30 minutes, why bother, to 30 minutes is perfect because I can use the 80-20 rule to squeeze as much progress as I possibly can out of every single minute. Stick around for tomorrow's video where I'll go more in depth on why I believe that Ionian, Dorian, Mixolydian are really the only 4 scales you need to practice to sound like the lead guitarist you've always wanted to be. But before tomorrow's video arrives, if you want to join the waitlist for 80-20 lead guitar mastery, which launches on Monday, and get a free blues rock soloing masterclass, click the link in the description box beneath the video.